everyone, in this video I'll be ranking the best Sorcerer multi-classes in Baldur's Gate 3 on a tier list. Now, the Sorcerer is a class that I typically prefer to have a full 12 levels of. However, there are some powerful multi-class I do want to talk about. The Sorcerer is honestly one of the strongest classes in the game due to its meta magics, which makes it able to do some crazy things with Extended Spell, Twin Spell, and Quicken Spell. So the first one we'll be focusing on is the Wizard. Now, the Sorcerer and the Wizard are the two main casters in Baldur's Gate 3. With the Sorcerer able to cast 2 spells with a bonus action Quicken Spell, the Wizard has more of the utility side, being able to prepare more spells. One of the big downsides to the Sorcerer is the fact that they don't get that many spells in comparison to the other classes. But one of the big upsides is that they are going to be much more impactful. With things like the Draconic Sorcerer being able to add your Charisma modifier to the damage of certain spells like Scorching Ray, the Sorcerer is pretty powerful. The Wizard, however, as far as multi-classes go, is great because they can learn spells from scrolls. Meaning you can take a level 11 Sorcerer and add a single level of Wizard and learn anything that you can find on a scroll. In my opinion, this is one of the best splits if you wanted to play a Cold Draconic Sorcerer due to them only really having Cone of Cold at later levels. You can then learn this as a scroll, and also things like the Artistry of War. So this can make you a lot more versatile in combat. And the thing is, you're not going to have the same spell save DC. However, the Hat of Fire Acuity, which is a crazy item, makes really the spell save DC not a major issue. Because with a spell like Scorching Ray, which you can shoot at a level 4 to hit 5 times, you can get yourself a plus 10. So we got a 27 spell save DC for our Charisma spells, and for the Wizard, we got it at 23, which is still pretty good considering this here. I don't even have this build min-max for intelligence, we just have a +1 modifier, so the 23 is honestly pretty good. So yeah, if you're going to use Arcane Acuity, this can be a very powerful combination because it opens up so much more success in terms of what spells you're able to use. And you can see here with our Odaluk's Freezing Sphere, 95%, 95%, 95%. So yeah, with a boost plus 10 to your spell save DC, you don't miss. So yeah, honestly, the Sorcerer and the Wizard are a good combination. 11 levels of the Sorcerer, so you get all the fun abilities, and their subclass passive, and then a single level of the Wizard. This is honestly, I would say S tier because it opens up some builds that are not really possible without this combination due to the Sorcerer not getting the same amount of spells in Baldur's Gate 3. And I'll also quickly mention this actually enables a Cleric build that is actually insane. We'll get to that in a moment because next we got the Paladin, which I actually think is the best combination for the Sorcerer. It's absolutely absurd how powerful. One of the main reasons is because Extended Spell is busted. What it does basically is any spell that has a duration, it's going to double it. This also affects things like Arcane Acuity if you got it from gear. So that Arcane Acuity I was talking about previously will give you 4 stacks. It's kind of nuts. That's besides the fact. This works on command. Command a Paladin spell with 2-turn duration without a concentration is absolutely absurd. And furthermore to that, there's an item in Act 3 which lets you do this as a bonus action. And what's even crazier is Shadowblade, obviously a super broken spell. You can get the level 5 version, which does a 4d8 of psychic damage, meaning that your smites are likely going to one-shot pretty much everything that's not immune to psychic. And it's actually good on your spell slots because not only are you getting level 5 spells and a lot more spells than you normally would as a Paladin, but you also get Booming Blade, which will give you a 2d8 of Thunder to help enhance your attacks without using spell slots. And they also fixed the Gloves of the Battle Mage's power to work on this. Shadowblade attacks and Divine Smite, so you can get your Arcane Acuity up to a plus 10 as well, even though it doesn't split your casting. The Shadow Magic also gets the ability to see in darkness, which is crazy because Shadowblade then gets advantage on its attacks, and you also have the Hound of Ill Omen at level 6, which is honestly a split you'd want to do. I personally like to take one more level of the Sorcerer and do the 7-5 split and then take Extended Spell, 1 sorcery point cost to make Ice Storm last for 4 turns so you have double the crowd control, which I think is great because that's typically going to last the entire round of combat. And you already know, Divine Smite being the big powerful ability of the Paladin. With the Sorcerer, they get more spell slots, so yeah, it gets pretty crazy. And then you can also drop a bonus action Ice Storm. And to top it all off, Vow of Enmity. You can cast this on yourself for advantage for 10 turns, and this works on your Scorching Rays. So you're going to land those to get that Hat of Fire Acuity popping off. It's crazy, absolutely crazy. And the Vengeance Paladin also solves the problem that the Sorcerer has where you don't get as many spells as you want. So you don't have to take Hold Person or Misty Step with the Sorcerer, you can get that from the Paladin. What's also nice is if you have a darkness themed team, you can actually set up and have everybody in the darkness with a bonus to their saving throws equal to your Charisma modifier. Typically this is hard to get because it's only a 3-meter radius, but with a Sorcerer you can do a lot of other cool tricks. So yeah, to go all out on all the crazy things you can do with this, if you got the Bolts of Doom, this gives you Chain Lightning as a Paladin, which is crazy because you can use this staff here and get lightning charge and do some lightning bonks. So the crazy part about this is Twin Spell actually works on Chain Lightning. So once you get your spell save to a +10, you can launch 2 Chain Lightnings for the price of 1. It does actually eat up 6 sorcery points, but it's well worth it because there's not much in this game that can survive 2 Chain Lightnings going around and destroying everything in that area of effect. It's one of the most broken things in this game. Furthermore to that, we do have Extended Spell, which again, on command for 2 turns is broken. Literally broken. So yeah, this combination is just non-stop insanity. And then on top of that, you also have Quicken Spell for Chain Lightning or Lightning Bolt too. So yeah, you can do your Smite, spell casting. It's honestly, I could talk about this all day. We're just putting the Paladin. It should have its own ranking at S++. I think this is honestly one of the best. Better than the Wizard, one of the best builds in the entire game. And next up, we got the Warlock. Now, this is a fun one because there's a couple that are really powerful. Actually, I'd say about 3 different combinations that are strong. The Fiend gives us the very powerful command. Again, extended spell command is crazy. And for a single level dib, I honestly think if you're a sorcerer, you're better off taking a Fiend just for this spell alone versus getting that feat at level 12. This also means you can take Hex, which is a bonus action which you can set up extra necrotic damage when you use Scorching Rays. So this is great on a Fire Draconic Sorcerer. And then you also get temporary health points, which is kind of nice whenever you take an enemy out. Not massive, but it's just a little bit of extra defense on your character. You also can get access to things like Hellish Rebuke you normally wouldn't have access to. I think Hex and Command are obviously the 2 best combinations, but there's actually also Armor Vagathus, which is another incredible spell to have on top of the Sorcerer if you're not going to play as a cold Draconic Sorcerer. So great multi-class. The Hexblade is another great one that got added with patch 8. It gives you a shield spell, which you can already get as a Sorcerer, but this is more so focused on getting like the medium armor proficiency. It keeps your casting as charisma based, and you could even just bonk with your weapon if you wanted to use it because it'll scale off charisma. The Hexblade's Curse being a big one because you can do some crazy stuff with Scorching Ray off of that. Getting shield proficiency on a class that normally doesn't have it is also quite nice, just for a single level dip, keeping your charisma modifiers the same. And you also get a Warlock spell slot too. The Great Old One with their Mortal Reminder is also nice if you're doing a Scorch and Ray style build because those crits in an area of effect are kind of nice. It's a 3 meter radius, not large, but you can get this to proc off somewhat often. But yeah, these 3 are great. My personal preference is the Fiend Warlock though. Getting command on a Sorcerer is just absolutely insane. This is a common Coffee Lock multi-class. This is an S tier one as well. I started out with all the good ones with the charisma, but next one isn't as good as these here. The thing with the Warlock though is that you can take 2 levels of it, which does cut you out of getting Chain Lightning, although you can just take scrolls of it. And this will give you the ability to see in Magical Darkness. So if you're not playing as the Shadow Magic Sorcerer, you still get the ability to see in darkness. This is a great multi-class for a variety of team compositions. And next we got the Bard, which is it's the last charisma one. I wanted to do those all at the start here, just because they do match very well. The Bard still matches well with the Sorcerer, but doesn't have the same synergy as the last few. This is because the Bard doesn't really have anything fancy until it hits like level 6, which is a pretty deep investment if you want a certain ability. Now, where this does get really nice is if you're taking a College of Lore Bard, this gives you the Cutting Words, which is a great ability to have. But once you hit level 6, you can get Spirit Guardians, which you normally can't get as a Sorcerer, which is great. And you can also grab Hunger of Hadar. But at that point, it's almost better to take the Warlock, in my opinion. But hey, you can keep the full spellcasting levels. You're just going to miss out on getting spells in your spellbook unless you take a single level of the Wizard. Now, the other really fun combination I do like is the College of Swords, because Slashing Flourishes is one of the best abilities in the game. Being able to attack 2 targets at once is busted. However, the Paladin is a better multi-class for this, so if you wanted to enhance your College of Sword Bard, Paladin for Divine Smite reactions, being able to smite 2 targets at once is way better. Like this one, I would say it's almost like a roleplay type idea, because it's not, they do work together, but I don't think that the Bard and the Sorcerer are that great of a multi-class. You don't gain as much out of these. While it's nice to have some of the abilities that you get from these, it's probably better to get it elsewhere. Like for example, with the Lore Bard getting Spirit Guardians, if you really want it that bad, the Cleric is a much better multi-class because it has a lot of synergy with lightning damage, where the Bard doesn't. The Bard's kind of more of a melee focused, or it is a spellcaster, but it doesn't really have the same oomph that you get from getting max level spells. But I guess at the end of the day, if you really wanted to do this multi-class, it will work. The Sword Bard would probably be my preference with a 6-6 split with Shadow Magic. So you get the Dog, you get Darkness, and you can do Slashing Flourishes. it's still pretty strong. This is definitely still an A tier. It's strong, not as good as the other ones, but I wouldn't recommend doing this when the other options are out there. Also, while we're on the talk of the bards, I would recommend checking out my College of Winter Spirit subclass mod that I made. And moving on to the Cleric, which is actually a really good combination because the Wizard exists, and that little trick I showed you guys with the Fire Acuity hat can make some insane builds if you really wanted to. For a lightning, like Thor, lightning god type build, the Tempest Domain is really fun because not only do you get a reaction at level 1, so you can deal a bit of extra damage, but you also get heavy armor proficiency from this. So at the start of the game, you can literally get your character level loaded up with some heavy armor. I'd recommend doing it at like level 6 when you have 5 levels of the Sorcerer, so you get like Lightning Bolt and things like that, and then getting the heavy armor proficiency. But this ability here, Destructive Wrath, I think this is the strongest subclass ability in the entire game. Basically, whenever you get thunder or lightning damage, you can use your channel divinity to deal maximum damage instead. This means that with chain lightning, that does max 80 damage. If the target is wet, that's 160 damage right then and there, considering the fact that we can also get our twin spell from the sorcerer and do that free chain lightning twice on a target. Its damage potential is just absolutely broken. It's like one of the strongest things in the game. To pull this off, I do have a build on it, but you do need to take the Cleric to level 2 here to get the Destructive Wrath. You also need to take the Wizard level 1, and that will give you the ability to learn Chain Lightning, and then you can take the rest of the points in the Sorcerer, typically my preference being the Lightning version of the Draconic Sorcerer, but now with the Shadow Magic Sorcerer, that one works too, so you can cast it from darkness. This one does, again, require a bit of multiclassing to pull off and make it powerful, but you get all the sorcery points and kind of the fuel for the damage from the Sorcerer. The Wizard lets you learn those spells you normally wouldn't be able to, and the Cleric is going to give you the ability to cast them with that max roll of damage. This is kind of just abusing mechanics in the game, but I mean, they haven't patched it as a patch 8, so I don't think this is ever going to change, so yeah, that's a very powerful combination. The other thing is, with the Cleric, you also have the Light Domain, which is a really great multi-class if you're doing a Fire style build, because you can take it to level 6 and get Spirit Guardians running around, and then also have like 5 levels of the Sorcerer and a single level of the Wizard, and still learn any spell that you want, and use the Fire Acuity hat and Scorching Ray combination. Honestly, the Cleric, I would say, is... I want to put it at the high A tier. The only downside, obviously, being the Wisdom-based spellcasting. I could move this up to S tier, but it kind of requires the Wizard to work as well. Honestly, this is a tough one. They could both kind of be there, but I do think even just a single level dip of the Wizard brings more value than the Cleric. So I'm going to put it at the top of the A tier. Despite these both being extremely powerful options, you kind of want to put them both together. And next is the Fighter. This is an interesting one because if you start with the Fighter, this also gives you the Constitution saving throw proficiency that you would get if you started as a Sorcerer. So that means that you're going to hold your concentration on spells, but it also will give you heavy armor proficiency and shield proficiency and a bonus action heal, which is nice to have just in a pinch. The only thing is with this multi-class, the Fighter is one that you'd like to take all the way to at least level 11 because that's when it gets the triple attack or 3 attacks. And same thing with the Sorcerer, you want to take it to level 11 to get your subclass abilities typically, and then also get your level 6 spells. So you have a lot to lose with both of these because you're kind of cutting out pieces to kind of put it all together. The Fighter does get an extra feat at level 6, however, so you still can get 3 feats if you go with a 6 split of the Fighter and the 6 split of the Sorcerer and still get all the subclass features, but at that point, I think that going with the Paladin is a much better option because then you are getting Divine Smite. Action Surge is nice because that can give you an extra spell, but I wouldn't cut out Chain Lightning for that if you're wanting to do a 2-level dip of the Fighter. You can use Scrolls, yes, but that's like kind of more so in the... It's not intuitive to play that way, but it is still an option. I do think the Fighter is okay at best. Best utilized probably as a single level dip to give yourself the armor proficiencies in this heal, but even at that point, I'd probably even rather do something a little different. And actually, between the Fighter and the Barbarian, they're both actually good for the defensive purposes that they bring. We'll get to the Barbarian after we talk about this one here, but honestly, the Fighter's not terrible. I'm going to put in the B tier for a single level dip. I wouldn't mix these like a 6-6 split because you're getting more power out of a Paladin multiclass by a lot, and even with a Bard multiclass or even a Hexblade if you want to do a charisma-based melee attack or spellcaster. So yeah, it's okay for the medium or heavy armor proficiencies and keeping your saving throw proficiency the same as well. But moving on to the Barbarian, this one is a little bit more interesting, I think, because this gives us the unarmored defense, which is much better. We don't have to worry about mage armor. And once you get to the late game, there's an Amulet of Greater Health, which will give you a pretty good boost to your overall armor class when just using this. So in the late game, once you got the Amulet of Greater Health, that's going to give a +6 to your armor class. If you have your dexterity at 20, that's a +5 to your armor class while you're wearing robes. You can also get robes. I'm just wearing a mod outfit here from Aerodea Nexus mods, but with this, you can get like a +5 dexterity, +6 from your constitution, and what's great is you can actually use a shield with that combination. So yeah, you can pump your armor class up to like 31 easily with this setup, and that's before even using things like mirror image. I wouldn't fully recommend using the Barbarian as a multi-class because you can't spellcast while you're raging, and we're not going to use the rage. It's really just for the passives, the slight benefits you get, and it's also a constitution-based class, so you can start with it and still keep your constitution saves. And one thing I do want to recommend is actually playing a Wild Magic Barbarian and a Wild Magic Sorcerer on the same team. Different characters, but they actually are very fun together, and I'd recommend that if you want a chaotic next playthrough. But I'd honestly say the Barbarian is another one. I'd slightly rank it higher than the Fighter just because it does something unique. It lets you wear robes and be a absolute tank. So yeah, I think that that's worth its merit. I could actually probably put the Barbarian up a little bit higher. Yeah, I might actually put it into the A tier just because, again, a +6 to your armor class for a single level dip while wearing robes. If you wanted to have like the robe of the weave on here, you're going to get a pretty good armor class because that gives a +2 and it keeps all your benefits here. I only have a +1 dexterity, but if we had that at +5, you can see we'd have a pretty tanky character. But yeah, Barbarian is not going to be used for anything other than a single level dip because yeah, they don't combine together other than that small benefit. Next, we got the Ranger. Now, the Ranger is a weird one. Again, it's kind of like you can compare them to the Paladin for half casters. The only problem is, yes, you're going to get heavy arm proficiency if you take this, which can be nice. But, I mean, you could take the Tempest Domain Cleric and also get a reaction on top of that. This is cool if you want to find familiar and heavy arm proficiency, but you're changing your spellcasting to wisdom with not a huge benefit other than getting like a defensive benefit out of it. There is combinations doing like the Gloomstalker Ranger and a Sorcerer. You could potentially do that. But again, at that point, why not just do it with the Paladin and get advantage on all your attack rolls for your spells, and then also do melee attacking with smites. The Ranger is in a weird spot where its multi-classes are best with things like the Fighter or the Rogue Thief for more of a stealthier based character. Yeah, being a half caster does keep us a little bit less, like we get less spells with it. So for the single level dip for heavy armor proficiency and a single elemental damage, I would say this is more so like a roleplay tier. I'm not going to put it in the roleplay tier. I just don't think it brings a lot of synergy like some of the other classes do. When the Fighter is going to give you your Constitution saving throw proficiency, a bit of healing, and then if you take it to level 2, you get Action Surge. The Ranger doesn't really have that same luxury. And then it's kind of the same for some of these other subclasses here. Like the Druid. I think the Druid is great, but it's another one like the Fighter and Sorcerer that likes to go to high levels. This is because at level 10, it gets the improved Wild Strike. So if you go into your Wild Shape form, you're going to be doing a bit more damage. This is only because the Druid's best spells are actually at like level 7, which is really nice. So you can't, if you wanted to get the Druid's best spells, you can't get your subclass feature from the Sorcerer. So they honestly don't really mix that well together. I like the idea of it, but unless you're using like a level 20 mod, they're not good together. So I'd have to say, like, I'm not going to go too far in depth on this. I think it's kind of clear that you can use like the starry form, but then you're again cutting off your spells that you'd get from the Sorcerer and making your spellcasting modifier different than what you'd want, which is okay in certain instances. I just prefer it with things like the Wizard when you're getting a much bigger benefit out of it. So I'd actually have to say that the Druid is another one that's probably like a C tier pick. Yeah, I even say that maybe the Ranger's better because it can give you heavy armor at level 1, which is a little bit better than the Druid, giving you something that you want to invest heavier in. Now, the Druid isn't as bad as the Monk, in all honesty. The Monk it's tough to multiclass. In pretty much any multiclass video or anytime I talk about multiclassing, the Monk is typically best with either the Barbarian, the Fighter, or the Rogue. The Rogue Thief being the best with 3 levels of the Rogue Thief for the bonus action to fuel the Monk's very powerful flurry of blows. The big problem here is we both have 2 abilities. We want Quicken Spell on our Sorcerer, we want Flurry of Blows, and to go into Flurry of Blows, you have to have a very high strength, so you have to use like a strength potion or any of the items. These don't combine together really at all. I think everyone knows that, so to save you, the Monk doesn't even have it does have the Wisdom-based defense, but the Barbarian can get a +6 and use a shield, where the Monk can't. This is RP tier, it's the worst one, I would say, in all honesty. But the last one's interesting, the Rogue. Now, the Rogue that I mentioned, I talked about how it's good with the Monk. The reason that it's good with the Monk is that it gives the Monk that extra bonus action, which we can actually use on the Sorcerer. So while this is not the most ideal, you'd think, with a 3-level Rogue, 9-level Sorcerer, that gives you that extra bonus action, which is kind of silly when you got, like, you can blast away with a Chain Lightning here, so first attack being that. And then we also have our bonus actions that we can use. We're going to get 9 sorcery points, so you can do 3 Quicken spells, which is not bad. This just means you can follow it up with more spells. This is going to be a way that you burn through your spell slots incredibly quickly because, yeah, using quicken spells on things like this is pretty nuts. But if you have any type of staff that gets you extra spells, or if you're using scrolls, you can do some pretty crazy damage with this. So it's worth mentioning just because of how powerful this can be when you just have a crazy high Nova damage like that, especially when using scrolls. If we had haste on our character, that would have been another spell. If we have a bloodlust potion, that would have been another spell. It's kind of silly, but it works. It's something you can do. And even like a pyro quickness hat would give us another bonus action, but it's a little glitchy. The helmet of grit gives you another bonus action if you go below 50 health. There's a lot of ways you can be kind of cheesy with this, but I think it's funny and worth mentioning. It's not as good as some of the other ones here, but I would say it's B tier. It's better than the Ranger. Getting an extra spell is much better than what that can provide. But there it is. That's my list of the best Sorcerer multiclasses. Paladin's just the craziest by far. Yeah, you got the idea. You get Divine Smite and then also Spellcasting, Booming Blade, Vow of Enmity, so you can get advantage on all your spells that you're casting. Scorching Ray will always land. It's pretty nuts. The Warlock, we got 3 great subclass that pairs well. I typically like a small dip of 1 or 2 Warlock, but honestly, anything kind of works with them. You can do a 6-6 split. The Shadow Magic Sorcerer, I do want to mention, actually has a ability that works with this. If you take the Shadow Magic's Hound, it actually works with the Spectres that you can get from the Hexblade Warlock, so some cool synergy there. We also have, again, the Wizard being a great opener. It can just open up for many different spellcasting combinations you normally wouldn't get as a Sorcerer. Cleric combined with that for one of the craziest lightning builds in Baldur's Gate 3. The Bard's still decent, but not really like one that I'd pick over the other 4. Same thing with the Barbarian, more so for defensive purposes. And yeah, talked about all the others, so you can rewind to see those points if you're curious. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. Hit that subscribe button below if you enjoyed. I hope you guys all have an amazing day.